Hey everyone, welcome to Underground Scholars Winter 21 podcast series, a podcast about elevating our formerly incarcerated and system impacted scholars' stories. You'll get the chance to listen to our members and advocates supporting USI 3 pillars through recruitment, retention, and advocacy. My name is Marisa Lopez, but you can call me Ritz. I'll be your host for Winter 21 USI podcast series. In today's episode, you'll get the chance to meet Juan Reyes and listen to his story. You also get the chance to see how we hella be vibing in these podcast series, and we come from similar backgrounds. We're both definitely system impacted, so there's going to be some lingo. Some folks who are listening will understand, and some folks who don't understand. But this is mainly for y'all who understand where we're coming from.
My name's Juan Jose Reyes. Um, I got my I got a bachelor's of science in sociology, law, and society, and a bachelor of arts in ethnic studies, both from UC Riverside. So, shout out to the gang over there. And I'm a underground scholar alumni of class 2020. 2020, yeah, 2020. I didn't transfer, but I did my undergrad at UC Riverside. So shout out to my fellow Highlanders over there. And then I took a gap year, but it wasn't much of a gap year. So I just took some classes in the community college. And then after that, that's when I got into UCLA's grad school for an MA in social sciences. So it was a 1 year program. And I found out about USI. I started looking for mentors, other graduate students that I can maybe learn from and just kind of get a hang of what grad school was like. And I came across um, some information about USI. I was looking at people that were doing research in whether it was mass incarceration, juvenile justice, or anything within that realm. And I came across underground scholars, and then that's when I found out when the meetings were being held, and I just popped up. So and then ever since then I just started showing up.
Nice. Is there anyone who stood out to you, or like, was there anyone specific in USI who introduced to you about USI?
Not anyone in specific, but I think the person that I kind of like um looked more into was Jorge David Mancia, JD, and I saw that he was associated with underground scholars. And I was like, oh well, let me see if I can meet him and talk to him and see what kind of work he's doing in grad school. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I'll show up. But then, I mean, in terms of anybody's like really sticking out, it was honestly everybody. I was like, damn, like these people got it on lock, and everybody's trying to participate, everybody's involved. So from the get-go, it was definitely welcoming, and I was like, all right, yeah, I can definitely see myself coming back every week.
So I'm glad that JD stood out to you, Juan. I'm glad that you felt so like open and entering to like USI grounds. Um, what are some highlights you remember? In person USI meetings.
um I mean, honestly, I would say like every Tuesday I looked forward to like just my day being over, and I was like, I mean, I've been here all day, I'm ready to go home, but every Tuesday I was like, nah, I'm definitely looking forward to staying those extra 2 hours, after my last class those days, and getting together with everybody. And what really stood out to me in terms of those meetings was just like, especially after hours, once everybody would leave, and then we would start just having more open conversations, not so much like about school, but it was more like, life conversations and really connecting with one another, and just being able to feel that comfortable with everybody from the gate, that I was like, I'm willing to share these experiences with you guys, and vice versa. And I mean, as far as like a big experience, it was definitely the conference that we went to at Columbia, in New York, and just kind of, I mean, I think for a lot of us, that was our first time in New York, and just kind of being away from school, from LA, really. And I don't know, just getting to experience this completely different environment with one another, and just seeing that there's so much advocacy going around, not just at UCLA, but throughout California, throughout other states. And there were even people there that were from out of the country. I believe some were from the UK. So it's just so, I guess I would say, heartwarming. It's a very dope experience to have had before I graduated.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing any like, meaningful conversations you had with our USI members or anyone like involved with USI? Because when we went to Beyond the Bars at New York at Columbia University, there were other state chapters there, like Berkeley, like Davis, Santa Cruz. Like, it's a couple folks. Like, a majority were like Berkeley and UCLA, but within our circle, just outside circle, like, were there any like meaningful conversations you mind sharing? You had with USI members?
One conversation that I do remember specifically was with you, actually, with Ritz and John, and I think Tom was there as well. And we were just talking about having family members incarcerated, and just kind of how that can affect us back home. And I'm system impacted, so I wasn't incarcerated myself, but my older brother was. So I was just kind of able to share that experience with Ritz, and just kind of really share how I dealt with it. And hopefully that can kind of either help, or just kind of, I guess, feel that, like, hey, like, you're not the only one going through this. Or like, it's cool that we can share this, and just kind of not see it as a negative thing that identifies us. Like, it's something that we as a family can overcome, both USI as a family, and also our individual families back home. And yeah, like, it's just, like, that experience of being a system impacted person, it's not like something that I usually go in depth about with people that I feel may not relate. But being able to be like, hey, like, my brother, like, this is why he was incarcerated. And, like, when he was incarcerated, these were kind of like some of the hardships that my family and I had. And this is kind of how we got through that. And also just kind of like understanding really what a system impacted experience is like. Not just like, hey, I have a family member or loved one that's incarcerated, but really like what goes on at home. And kind of, how do you support that loved one or that family member from home, and still kind of juggle everything else that you have going on, especially with us being college students. um, it can get overwhelming at times.
Yeah, man, you hit that mark. Like, how do we balance? And I feel like people ask me that question too. Like, you got so much going on. Like, how do you involve? How do you do all this? And like, I'm happy to have like USI because y'all just get me. Like, y'all get it. Like, you just having this conversation with me right now just takes me back to that moment where we were in person. We had those like meaningful conversations. We still do, um, but it's just like we kind of just roll with it. I mean, there's nothing else. Like, well, we can't just stop. Like, our life is still moving forward. But I wanted to ask you, did you always know the term system impacted? Did you learn it outside in USI? And then once you knew about what system impacted meant, how did that make you feel?
I actually never came across the term before USI. That was my first introduction, or exposure rather, to the term. And I think, honestly, throughout college, I mean, at times you not necessarily feel like you don't belong, but you kind of know that you stand out, you know. And that was definitely my experience throughout a lot of my college time. Luckily, it never impacted me in a negative way. Um, but then, you know, when I started taking, so I got my BS in sociology, and really what made me love sociology so much was that, you know, we'd start talking about topics of uh, youth at risk, or as I like to refer to them, marginalized youth. And you know, we talk about these experiences and these kind of behaviors, and we had terminology for it. And I was like, hey, like, there's people who actually like care enough about these experiences and these populations that they're, you know, not only trying to understand them further, but they have like terminology for it. So now I can put my finger on like, hey, maybe that's why I was acting up. Or, you know, like my behavior can be like associated with this, that, and the other. And that's really how I felt when, you know, I started hearing the term system impacted, that it's like, hey, like now I can have something that I can refer to as my experience, you know. So it puts a name on things. I wouldn't say that it labels it, because that kind of, you know, it gives off a little bit of a negative vibe. But you know, like it gives a name. And I think when we have a name to something, it gives it more meaning. And it just kind of, it serves as an empowering thing, really, you know, that like I said, like this is common enough that it can be given a term, you know, a name. Or it's common enough that people care about it and they're willing to study it and further understand it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like I tell folks like the same thing once I found out that what system impacted meant for me. Like, man, that was like a little revolution in your head. Like you kind of just like, whoa, this has always been it. And I just discovered it later in college. And it's just like, yeah, for sure. It's not something to be like, I personally didn't feel like, oh, something for me to be ashamed about. I think only because I said that because I was within like USI, like a group that I felt very open sharing and asking questions that someone could finally answer them. Like, hey, how do you put money in JPay? Like, how do you order stuff in Walker Horse? How do you put like minutes on your phone to like call your loved one? Um, and yeah, so it's like a piece of identity, Juan, I guess we can say like we found on campus that we were kind of just processing to it and just like, oh, okay, this is finally it. Like, you finally put the pin on the paper to the wall. So it's intense.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like I said, like, and honestly, I don't get tired of saying it, that like I would always look forward to the meetings, because, you know, like you said, like we find an identity in that. And like, you know, like you were saying, like asking people like, hey, like, you know, about JPay, or like, you know, global telling, or like
Yep.
we know what the 713 phone call is,
Oh
you know.
my gosh.
So it's like,
I just had this conversation with Diana. I was
yeah, and like,
like, 713. Like,
yeah, like we know it says Texas, but we know it's not Texas, you know.
that 50-minute call.
So like, you know, it's just little things like that, like they just make time on campus easier. Like, you know, I can go through a whole week, like, you know, studying and seminars and turning in paper, reading books, and just like a 1 hour meeting with USI, like just cracking jokes, and, you know, like that's enough to just kind of you know, be like, all right, that was a good breather. And, you know, like I said, like some people wouldn't get that joke, you know, but we don't have to explain anything. Like we know what it means, just out of, you know, experience and culture. And it's just dope that we don't have to shut that down, and rather we can express it, you know.
Yeah, man. Oh, trust me, like I wouldn't be able to joke around with other folks about this because they're gonna be like, "Wait, what? Like I don't get you." And I'm like, dang, like how do I explain this? And then it becomes very like, oh, me giving them a history lecture and then like a whole background to it. And I'm like, it's not funny no more. I kind of
Yeah,
just
it's not funny anymore.
I was just like, this shit got too literal because after I just start putting articles and like, bro, you gotta read this, and it's just kind of like, all right, fool, that's just too much. I'm like, I'll feel you, don't worry. Oh man, um, but how does it? You mentioned earlier about having a brother who's formerly incarcerated. Um, I because my brother's still in, right? But
Mhm.
how do you feel having your brother like with you? You get me, like, and you going to school? I mean, you graduated already, and like how do you show him support like since he's been out?
I mean, to be quite honest, it can be difficult. My brother and I are only a year and a half apart, but um, so he got incarcerated when he was 19 for 5 years, and like, I mean, it's crazy, but the speed in which our life goes, it's crazy when you look back at it and you're like, damn, like all of that has happened. And maybe to some people 5 years may not sound like a lot, but you really see that difference. Like I said, with my brother and I, we're in terms of our generation, I guess you can say, we're pretty much right, back to back. But like, I feel like he's still, trying to catch up, not with me, but with the world, like, so little things like social media, smartphones, and um like, I mean, even things such as like Lyft and Uber, like, those things weren't popular, or they weren't around when he got incarcerated. So like, just trying to get him up to speed with the world, it's kind of hard. But also, like, realistically, that experience specifically to him and I, um because I was so busy with college, and I mean, I overloaded myself with classes and just school. So I never really had a time to um, build a bond with him while he was incarcerated. I'm not saying that we don't get along, but in terms of like connectedness, we know that it's not all the way there. So,
Yeah.
it's still taking some time to get there. But um, it's kind of like, how do I tell him, like, hey, this is this, that, and the other. It's kind of like how the world works nowadays, without um coming off as like trying to decide for him, or like, trying to like, um I guess, tell him what to do. uh but I don't know, like, it definitely is hard, I guess you can say. But in terms of like support, I think more of the way in which I do that with him is just kind of like really just listening to him.
Hmm.
He likes to tell me a lot of stories, and like, I mean, with him it's great because I don't even have to like prompt him. He'll just start telling me a bunch of stuff. And and he knows it too, that he'll tell me like, oh, like somebody else, like, they'll just get bored and they won't know. And it goes back to, like, like we were saying, that like these experiences and this
Yeah.
culture, like, it's common to us. So like, he knows that I'm not gonna look at him like, what the hell are you talking about, that I get him. So more than anything, that's really what I do. And especially because I've gone through college already, and I kind of had to figure things out. um as I was going through. Now I tell him, like, no te dejes, like, don't let yourself,
Hmm.
like, don't let the counselors tell you, like, no, you can't take this class.
Exactly.
Like, you have to be assertive, like, especially coming from the backgrounds that we come from. It's easy for them to, kind of like brush us off and be like, oh yeah, like, you can major in this, because like you'll be a good fit, or like, here's your schedule. Whereas like, I think it's better if we find ourselves what majors we really have a passion for, and like our true best fit. And you know, luckily for me, my big mouth did help me in college. So, I was able to be like, "Oh, you're not gonna give me that class? All right, let me go to the other counselor. All right, hey, these are the classes I need. All right, you can give it to me. All right, I'm gonna come back to you. I don't care if I'm assigned to you by last name or not, but I'm gonna come back to you."
Yeah.
So, like I tell him that that's how you have to be, because it's easy for them to look at us and brush us off, but when it's time to be assertive, you just have to be. So I tell him that, and then he usually comes to me with like questions about college and kind of like studying habits and all that stuff. So I give him some pointers, but at the end of the day, I tell him that my experience is different, is going to be different than his, for a number of things, but that like I can give him some tips and some guides, but ultimately he just kind of what works best for him.
Yeah, man. See, that's the ultimate thing. You get me? Like, there's a lot of pressure on you, but there's also pressure on him too. You get me? Like, I think about that because, like, man, when you told me the Uber and Lyft thing, that thing just like, my heart sank for a bit. You get me? Because my brother, like, whenever he's in there, he's like, "Oh, Mertz, like, I know what's going on. I watch the news all the time. Like, don't worry. Like, I'm caught up. Like, you get me? Like," and I was like, "Hey, bro, do you know what an Uber is?" He's like, "Oh, I heard about it. It's like, a car that takes you." And like, bro, yeah, there's Uber Eats. Like these tiny little things. Because
Yeah,
I remember being in middle school, man, and I saw someone who just came out of county because he still had a uniform on, and he had no idea what the fuck a tap card was because he had that paper like LA, like I don't know, back in like 2012, like they had the paper slips. You pay $1.50, you get like a little paper card for you to go in, and
yeah,
like,
yeah,
but like cops were like it was hard for them to tell and give you a ticket because you can just randomly buy it from someone. A tap card makes it harder for folks to sneak in trains and metros and bus and all that. But man, I saw this fool come out and he reminded me of my brother, and I bought him a tap card, but I just didn't have money to put in it. You get me? And but luckily there was like a Juanita who came by and just paid it for him. And I was just like, dang, like, and her and I looked at each other. It's like we got it, like we understood it. And I was like, oh, okay. But see, like that's the thing. Like I do appreciate you being able to like be there present with your brother and validate him, being like, like your story is your story, bro. What you're going through is you. But also like no dejan que like gente te agüitan. You get me? Like don't let people put you down. Because at the end of it is your life.
yeah, yeah. Because like he recently had a similar experience to what I had, that um, like my freshman year of college. So it sucked that that happened in my first quarter, but I really don't care. But like I went into the counselor that was assigned to me, and I was like, hey, like this is kind of like my aspirations, really. Like you come to them like with what you're aspiring to become.
Hmm.
And I was like, hey, these are the two majors that I want. And she just looked at it, like she didn't even bother looking me up on the system or like anything. She looked at it and she was like, no, you can't do that, you're not going to be able to get that. I was like, man.
Haters.
Yeah, I was like, salty ass. But then, I mean, ultimately, it's funny enough because I didn't end up getting either of those. I hated them. It was business and bio. I'm not hating to my business and bio people out there, but it just wasn't for me because, I mean, I barely passed. So. But
Bro, I wanted to be a chem major. Nowhere near that.
and then you take a chem or a bio class and you're like, all right, maybe not.
I like my
Uh,
periodic table. That's pretty much it.
yeah. So like then he recently he had a similar experience in the community college too, where he was like, hey, these are the two majors that I want, and they were like, no, you have to choose one. And I told them, no, like, that degree and that education is for you, like you're the one getting it. So don't let them tell you no. Like their job is not to tell you what you cannot do. Like their job is simply to, honestly, like it, I mean, it
Assist you,
sucks to put it
fool.
this way, but like it just means to be like they just need to be like, all right, yeah, you can take these classes, or like no. And then like, like their job is not to shut you down. And I feel like
The job is to basically include resources and be like, hey man, you need help. It seems like you're not doing so well in your classes. Like, let me connect with you someone who can like, better assist you. Cause that's In our second episode, folks, like we had Jacqueline Rodriguez. I got a chance to interview her. The cool thing I like what she said was that, and you said it too, like, um, well, it kind of said in a different way. Like for her was like when I reached out asking for stuff, like I didn't really get a no. I kind of got referred by someone else, connecting me to other stuff. But in your case, I feel like I can relate because it's like when someone told me no, I'm like, all right, homie, I'm gonna go around because I know there's someone out there who's gonna say yes. Like, and same goes with your brother. You get me? Like, let him know, like, dude, like that. If that counselor is like putting you down, go somewhere else. Go to a different counselor.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, like universities, they're just bureaucracies, and like I remember they would tell me like, oh, you're gonna have to submit this form or this petition or that, this, that, and the other, and I'd be like, all right, I fill it out, but who is it going to? And then they, oh, we don't know, blah blah. I'm like, just tell me who it's going to because I want to know, like, hey, like this is my education. And then they would tell me, oh, it was like like for example, it was a class that I needed to take. I want, well, no, yeah, actually, I did need it, and they were like, oh, you have to fill out a form to get into it, and I was like, all right. So I filled it out. I'm like, all right, who's gonna make the decision whether I can get the class or not? Oh, you know, the department, blah blah. So I'm like, all right. So then, you know, I would go on my laptop, look up the department, find out who the chair was, and find where their office was at. And then
Dang.
I show up to their office, and you know, I'd be like, hey, like, you know, I'm trying to get into this class. They made me submit this form, so you know, you'll see my name pretty soon. Um, can I get in? And you know, a lot of times I think they would just be like, sure. Like, I mean, you're already here, so you know,
Dang,
so
that's dope.
like they, like I said, they try to kind of like brush you off when you like, you know, when it comes to like submitting forms and getting permission to do this or that. And like I said, you just kind of have to be resourceful. And that's what I tell my brother, that like, you know, before you go in, like be prepared, like, you know that, hey, this class, this is what we're going to learn, so it should, like, you guys need to approve it because it applies to my major. You know, so like just being prepared, because that way, like, you're pretty much just going in there to be like, hey, like, I need you to sign off on this, like, I don't need you to tell me what I need to take, I already know. um so you know, that's usually like what I try to tell them, that like, hey, like, you need to be on top of your shit, that way they can't step over you. And you know, if they see that, like, hey, like, all right, you know, they know what they're talking about, then they'll just kind of, they will give you what you're going in there and asking for. um because if not, then yeah, I mean, I had one counselor that she canceled my appointment because she got sick. And so I went with another counselor, and then when she came back, she was just like, oh, well, you know, you can go with her since you already started the paperwork with her. And I was like, I mean, shit, say less, I don't like you anyways. So you know, like, I just started going with
Ain't
the
no
other one, like,
mas.
yeah. So you know, she was, the other counselor was way cooler. Like, she never told me no. Um, and yeah, like, I remember seeing her in the day of graduation, and you know, she was stoked that I was done. So you know, it was cool. It was a great relationship that I ended up having with her.
Damn, I'm glad to hear that, dude. Just to kind of take a pause here and just kind of like, take it back to USI in general. Do you think the things you've learned now that you graduated, like anything USI, can definitely, help you in the future? Like, what do you think you benefited from being part of Underground Scholars? And I'll ask you a question after this one later.
More than anything, it was just knowing that these groups exist, and knowing that there's so many people out there, you know, advocating in higher education for, uh, you know, our experiences to be validated, and just bringing them to light in these institutions, which speaks for itself. And you know, because UCR didn't have a USI chapter when I was going through undergrad, so I'm stoked that now there is one on campus.
Yep.
So you know, it, it's it it's dope to know that USI is growing and is setting up shop in other universities. So that is just amazing to me. But also, like I said, knowing that USI has people in art, in sociology, in English, in damn, I don't know everybody's major, but I'm pretty sure there's some other people out there in like the natural sciences. Like I said, that didn't work out for me, but
I'm over here. Dang, do you fake? How do you not know all of our stuff, Dom?
and like it's just it's because I know that my experiences would come up just naturally in class, and during discussions, and I'm pretty sure, but I hope that these experiences are also coming up in everybody else's classrooms, and um,
Mhm.
I'm hopeful that they feel comfortable enough. That there's nothing wrong with being formerly incarcerated or system impacted, and that we're bringing these experiences to the classroom to people who may not uh, know anybody, or that may not know anybody that was incarcerated or is system impacted. So like I remember Theoberto's art exhibit, and like just having that at UCLA, it was just, I mean, I remember walking into it and I was like, damn.
So let's take a pause here for a sec. We had Juan Reyes mention Alberto Lule, who we call Tio Berto, and he had an exhibition at the UCLA Arts School of Arts and Architecture exhibition, and he had a couple installation. One was a privatization of correctional institution, 2019 installation. Another one, investigation number 9, 2020, forensic fingerprint powder with plexiglass with the bathroom tiles. It's a 48 by 84. Hood Rich, we sell house fast, 2020 acrylic on the campus. There's a gentrification sign, 60 by 75. And the installation that Juan was mentioning is a privatization correctional institution 2019 installation. So it's super rad. I would highly recommend y'all to, you won't get the same experience in person, but you get a glimpse of Alberto Lule's work by just simply Googling Alberto Lule, usually Department of Arts. So let's get back to Juan Reyes.
I would have never thought that a 4-year university, and despite what any haters say, like the number one public university, like that they would have something like this on campus. And like, I mean, it was amazing work, so it's not like about the quality of the work, but like just that type of experience, and like I said, it's just amazing to me knowing that USI exists, that it's growing, and that um, you know it provides like an extended family on campus for a lot of people. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for a long time. At UCLA, um, just because my program was fast, but for undergrads, like you have like a family for your undergrad experience, and it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, man. Even though you were there for a year, you definitely made an impact. Um, but we're coming to an end to a podcast, Juan. But if you can, are there any last minute words of encouragement or, anything, I feel like, did you feel like you left a little legacy behind USI that they can remember you besides this podcast?
I mean, I just like you said, just even like my presence, I hope that because I know the majority of USI at UCLA when I was there were undergrads. I hope that some of them, some of you got to see me and be like, hey, like, how's this kid, at grad school for UCLA, like, if he can get there. And I mean, like, I talk shit with USI, but like I would talk shit in 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 my grad school seminars too. And like the same way that I was with USI, I was with with all my professors and the other people in my program or my cohort. And like just knowing that, like, hey, like there's nothing wrong with being like that, or talking shit here and there. um in these institutions, like I hope that somebody can see that and be like, hey, I if he can get there, I can definitely get there too. um and I mean, in terms of like words of advice, like I said, like I give my brother the advice that, like, regardless if you're doing advocacy for um whether it's youth justice or youth intervention, mass incarceration, like whatever it is, don't forget to be an advocate for yourself.
Mhm.
Um, like you have to also like put yourself forth, because like if you want to help other people, like you need to like come with the best version of you. And like no te dejes, don't let people step over you. um and I mean, like I always say, where there's a will there's a way. So if you want to do it, you're definitely gonna do it. You might piss some people off, but hey, you'll be happy, and that's what matters.
During the last months, our communities have been vigorously discussing and taking steps to make sure that our schools are eliminating barriers and providing the support and opportunities that will ensure the empowerment and success of students of color and other marginalized groups. We are here sharing this statement to acknowledge our brothers and sisters who are currently incarcerated. We also want to acknowledge our formerly incarcerated brothers and sisters who have not yet shared their stories. We're hoping to elevate our Black, Indigenous, people of color, formerly incarcerated students hustle. So, interested in collaborating, having general questions, please feel free to reach out our program's email at undergroundscholars@saonet.ucla.edu. That's all for now, folks, but I'll see you in the next episode of Underground Scholars.